What's something that was considered rude 20 years ago but is normal now? Story 1. Not writing BRB when stepping away from the computer while chatting online, or ending the convo without saying bye. Answer. I think message history being permanent has a lot to do with this. It just made digital conversations perpetual. Before, your phone could only store so many texts, and you didn't know it, people had instant messages logs on, as it wasn't the default, if it was even supported by what they were using. It's kind of wild how the culture changed without anyone noticing or making an effort, though. Story 2. To some people, it's now normal to film or take pics of strangers, then spread them around like it's nothing. Rescue services have literally done campaigns telling people not to film or photograph accident scenes. The fact some people need to be reminded about how it would suck to have your or a loved one's emergency spread uncontrollably as entertainment is a chilling thought. Answer. Yeah, that's still rude. There's just more rude people. I've watched YouTubers go on rants about this, even making content out of people saying they don't want to be on camera. "I don't want to be in your movie" is a very common phrase a content creator will openly point to and laugh at and make fun of, even if they're otherwise respectful and kind and intelligent people. The argument the YouTubers make is, "This is a public place. I'm not filming you. I'm filming the place. Nobody's watching this cares about you being in the shot." But it's so tone-deaf and entitled. The people are part of the content, and the content is monetized. In a situation like that, there's little difference between live streaming and filming a motion picture on a real city street. And when you do that in a motion picture, you have to get signed authorization from the random people in that shot before you can use them in the film. Occasionally, a scrappy rogue indie filmmaker will sidestep this requirement because they don't have the means. But social media users always see themselves as rogue, scrappy filmmakers, even if they're pulling in millions of dollars a year. It then gives the impression to viewers that in their own smaller social media video posting, pointing a camera at other people is the normal thing to do, and not wanting to become their content is the weird thing to be. Just like the people who talk and check their smartphones in a movie theater, who think the movie theater is a social event, and it's the people angry at this who are the rude ones. Social media users of this type simply cannot understand that they are a type of person, not the default, normal person this world revolves around. Story 3. Not answering the phone every single time someone calls. I think I probably pick up 10 of the phone calls I receive. I have an outgoing message letting people know that I don't answer unsolicited calls from numbers I don't recognize, so they need to leave a message and I'll get back to them. Answer. My friends and family know that my phone is for me to get in touch with you, not for you to have on-demand access to me. I'll get back to you when I can if I can't answer right now. It used to be that if someone was home office and available to speak, they'd answer the phone. Then cell phones came along, and they were such a novelty that people always answered them, even when it is rude to the people around them. Don't get me started on the rudeness of public speakerphone and loud audio. Story 4. Talking openly about money like salaries, rent, or even how much you spent on something used to be considered really impolite or taboo in casual conversation. But now it's becoming normal and even encouraged as people push for transparency, fair pay, and breaking down financial stigma. Answer. My mom has a really siloed job that only her and one other guy do. They've been working closely together for 15 years. Every day, just the two of them. He's like a family member at this point. I was so shocked when she told me they never once shared salaries. She just kind shrugged and said, "It's not what people in my generation do." Meanwhile, I have a small group at work where we always share salaries, bonuses, raises, etc. We do keep it hush-hush to not cause a stir with upper management, but we gladly welcome anyone into the club. Story 5. Bringing pet dogs into restaurants and grocery stores. Watched someone's toy something take a dump in the pharmacy aisle at Costco right after an employee finished mopping. Why is this just accepted? Answer. Because there are a loud group of people in support of dog owners, and there are a lot of people who think their dogs do no wrong. Take any video of someone who is afraid of dogs, and there will be people gaslighting their fear in the video and comments. It starts here. If you push back against dogs in public areas, people start calling them support animals to make it awkward. Sometimes they can even cripple a business if the main group that shops is local and doesn't agree with the rule. Anytime I see a business put their foot down and have a no pets sign, especially places with food, I make sure they get some of my money. It's rare to see. Story 6. Breaking up with someone via text. It's still rude AF for a more serious relationship if you ask me, but it is unfortunately very normalized. Story 7. Not answering the door. I legit freeze, stay quiet, and check my porch camera before even thinking about answering the door these days, if I am not expecting someone. And I only started doing that because I have elderly neighbors who occasionally drop by, both for emergencies and to give us food. They garden and give us excess produce. Also, she is an Italian grandma and sometimes sends over amazing dinners if she cooked too much. Story 8. Politicians who actually say they wish harm on their fellow men. News agencies who want people to be put to passing for their poverty. The hyperbole speech that is being spouted with no accountability or shame. Story 9. Talking during movies. I swear, just before, and especially after the pandemic, this has gotten so much worse. What the hell is with people talking during movies like they own the place now? Also, ghosting people or flaking out at the last minute with something that was planned on in advance. People, for the most part, didn't ever do either of those things unless it was a super good reason. Like with flaking out, it wasn't even considered flaking out. People would pretty much only cancel plans at the last minute if they had some kind of emergency or something unexpected came up. And ghosting affiant people only did that sort of thing if someone was being a creep or there was a big argument or whatever. Now it's like people will ghost someone at the drop of a hat or seemingly no reason. And ghosting started being a thing with job-related stuff too. My sister had an interview recently, and things seemed to be going well, like she might actually get the job, but suddenly she was ghosted. Answer. On flaking out when something was already planned out. A couple months ago, my sister and I planned a bridal shower for our other sister. We invited around 30 people, had a beautiful charcuterie board, a flower arranging bar, etc. Everyone who RSVP'd said they would definitely make it, so we made sure we had enough food and flowers for everyone. We had scheduled it for 2 p.m., and by then only 10 people showed up. 2:30 rolls around and only 5 more show up. None of the people that didn't show had said anything about not being able to make it, or even that they might not make it. Incredibly rude and a bit disheartening. Story 10. Well, for starters, the fact that 20 years ago means the early 2000s, not the 1980s, that's pretty heckin' rude. Story 11. Ghosting used to be seen as rude and cowardly, whether it was a friend or a date. These days, it's normal. Story 12. Bragging. Flaunting wealth and success. Showing everyone photos of your expensive vacation, the expensive clothes you bought, and the expensive food you ate. Story 13. 2 decades ago, pulling out your phone and looking at it while talking to someone was seen as a sign that you were bored or that the other person was unimportant. Now, it's so normal that most people don't even bat an eye. Answer. I know it seems like we've had smartphones forever, but iPhone launched in 2007. So 2 decades ago, you'd have been looking at a flip phone or a Palm device on 2G, 3G with extremely limited. So yeah, unless it was ringing because someone was calling you, if you busted out your phone to look at it in the middle of a conversation, then you were definitely being rude and signaling that the other person was unimportant. Story 14. Guys, you do realize that 20 years ago was 2005, right? Most things mentioned in the comments here were already normalized by then. 911 jokes were rude at that time. It was too soon. Now, there are adults who were born after 9/11. They don't care so much. Story 15. You say, hello, how are you? I say, good, thanks. How are you? You don't respond or ask an entirely different question. Story 16. Being rude to service workers. I swear I see it everywhere I go now, especially in a post-COVID world where everyone seems to have lost their manners. Story 17. Talking about salaries. I feel like that was a way for companies to keep people in the dark and to keep them from asking for raises. Now, I have no problem telling someone my salary or hearing theirs if we are in the same job area, so neither of us are unaware of market wages. Story 18. Reading the newspaper or watching TV during mealtime. Now, everyone, even my gran, who is an old-school etiquette lady, uses their phone while watching TV during meal gathering time. Story 19. Saying something sucks used to be considered a crass term. Not quite a cuss word, but generally you wouldn't say it in front of children or your priest or your boomer boss. Nowadays, it's completely tame. Story 20. I have a reverse one. Normal before, rude now. Engaging in a discussion about how and why you and someone else disagree on something. Now people just take it to social media and all possible solutions are gone.
Story 21.
When did it become acceptable to wear pajamas everywhere? As a child, while my grandmother didn't approve, you could wear jeans and a t-shirt most places. I absolutely wasn't allowed to wear jeans to church, not even for the social get-togethers. People used to throw on a t-shirt shorts when coming off the beach or out of a pool. No shirt, no shoes, no service was a very real thing. Now I feel lucky if they're still wearing their bathing suit. Story 22. The way we dress out in public. I've had the luxury of being able to not give a shoot all my life. I'm only 20. Thank God. I dislike suits. Answer. I get you, though I think it depends on where you lived 20 years ago or longer. My first job out of college was with Xerox in 1988. Corporate was in Rochester, New York, and engineers wore ties to the office. I worked in Palo Alto, California, and we wore t-shirts. In 1997, Wolfgang Puck opened a Spago in Palo Alto with a very strict dress code. They ended up changing it within 4 months because the kind of people who had the money to dine regularly at Spago were all tech guys who weren't going to put up with it. Story 23. Swearing. I actually remember goofy references to it like H-E double hockey sticks or fiddlesticks, which are now just for sarcastic laughs. Story 24. Cursing in public. It has always been there, but it's way more prevalent now. I know a handful of parents that don't care how dirty their kids' mouths are. Story 25. Fudge selfies. There is an old video clip from the 90s of Michael Jackson playing with his new camcorder. He pans past a mirror and makes a joke about being a narcissist and obsessed with his reflection. Even the weirdo thought it was weird. Nowadays, people have multiple pictures of themselves in bathroom mirrors. Story 26. Walking into the elevator as soon as the door opens, not letting anyone out first. What is with this? Story 27. People say cunt way more often in the US now, and often it isn't even derogatory. That used to be considered really bad, and also just want in super common use. Story 28. Pulling out your phone to check messages, browse the internet, or even just fidget with it while talking to someone was considered quite rude and antisocial behavior. Story 29. Taking a phone call in front of others. Whether it was at home or in an office, people would take it in another room. Story 30. I'm not sure if these rules still apply, but I feel like a lot of table manners I learned growing up are out the window, like elbows on the table, napkin in your lap, etc. Those things don't really bother me, but JFC, I hope people continue to chew with their mouths closed. Story 31. Using your phone at the dinner table used to be seen as really rude, but now it's pretty common and often accepted. Story 32. Acting like you're hot shoot. Kids at school were beat up when they acted like kids do on TikTok these days. Story 33. Speaking on a mobile or playing music video on a mobile in an enclosed public space, like a restaurant or a bus. Using a mobile at all in a dark cinema during a movie. If you are destroying the peace of the place and other people cannot escape it, then you're being rude. Story 34. How do we feel about hats indoors? I seem to remember always being told to take off my hat when I went inside a place, like someone's house or a restaurant. Was that a normal request then? Is it required now? Story 35. Talking on speakerphone on the street or in the store. Still considered rude, I guess, but only by half of us, apparently. Story 36. In my country, it used to be rude to have your cell phone out while at a table with other people. That was almost 30 years ago. Just a few people had them, and you came across as a show-off. Also, if someone called you, you excused yourself and stepped away to answer the phone. Story 37. Using your cell phone in public bathrooms. I find it incredibly intrusive. I started noticing people doing it around 2015. I just want to pee in peace. Plus, who wants to be on the phone with someone and hear toilets flushing? Story 38. Waiting until the weekend to text your friend on a different carrier because that's when texts and minutes were free. Story 39. When my mom told me what her political affiliation was, she told me that it was rude to discuss political affiliation in public. Well, Story 40. This'll sound weird, I think, and I'm Australian, so it's a different culture, but swearing. I work retail here, and I have customers walk up and just go like, "How you fucking going? I need a new TV." That sort of opens up us to swear a little in the conversation and create a rapport. If the customer doesn't swear, we don't? Weird rule, I guess. Story 41. Using your phone at the table during a meal. 20 years ago, if you pulled out your phone, it was a total sign of disrespect. Now it's normal to see people checking their social media or answering a text while eating. Story 42. How young women today tolerate being called bro by anyone, let alone men they're dating, is beyond me. Would not fly 20 years ago. Story 43. Swearing in public. Still portrayed as rude, but it seems to be a lot more acceptable now than it did before. Story 44. Not immediately answering hello when you answer the phone. Apparently Gen Z and Gen Alpha are so conditioned to be wary of bots now that they wait for the caller to speak first before speaking themselves. Everyone from earlier gens still says hello when answering because that's what we've always done. But now, Gen Z and Gen Alpha consider it rude if you, the caller, don't speak first instead. Honestly, with all the scam calls, I don't blame them. Story 45. Talking on the phone in public. There's a reason we used to make boxes with doors for that. I don't want to hear your business. Story 46. So glad you asked this. I interviewed someone last week, and at the end of the interview, I put my hand out to shake his hand, and he did a fist bump. Do we not handshake anymore? Has that dies out? Answer. Somewhat. It wasn't really a thing during COVID, and hasn't picked up much by now, which I'm really glad for. At work, I often have contact with business partners, but normal people too, and I dislike having to shake hands. Half the time, the other party's hand is either limp and moist, or they are trying to crush my hand as a show of dumb fuck dominance. Not to mention where people are willing to put their hands, plus the reports of how many men especially don't wash their hands after a bathroom trip. Being forced to touch somebody's hand is just gross. Story 47. Ponzi schemes. NFTs, crypto rug pulls are Ponzi schemes. If rude is the pure essence of an euphemism, that is its resolution. Story 48. Might be going back a little more than 20 years ago, but it used to be considered extremely tacky and low class to openly discuss your politics, religion, or salary in casual conversations, or to ask people theirs. Very frowned upon at one time. Now people make social media posts about it and act like, at times, that they are entitled to know your business in these areas. Story 49. Not paying attention during a conversation due to a phone in their hand. Younger generations are worse. I sometimes just quit talking altogether and wait for them to realize how incredibly rude they are before attempting to salvage the conversation. Social media addiction is so incredibly bad right now and not discussed enough. Story 50. A lot of people have commented on messaging protocols, but I want to take it a step further. Simply answering, returning a call, a message, a text, an email, or letter. I cannot tell you how many of my family, friends, acquaintances, or coworkers simply do not return any kind of communication for any purpose, do not believe they should have to, and cannot understand why people are upset at them for not bothering. When my attempts to engage are willfully ignored, I simply do not try any longer, and communication ceases for periods of weeks, months, or years. If and when they do send something, they often act like I'm the one who has been out of touch or is being weird for asking about some follow-up question. For 99 of folks, I know they aren't that busy, and it's laziness, detachment, or lack of interest, all of which are fine, but you can't expect people to do things for you either. Story 51. Not acknowledging people on the sidewalk. Smiling or a kind comment to strangers used to be kind. Now you're looked at like a creep. Story 52. My very anecdotal sense is that more people side with celebs who refuse autographs than did 20 years ago. Story 53. It's a bit more than 20 years ago, but the final episode of Seinfeld made a big deal about Elaine answering an important call on her mobile phone while she was out, and how rude that was. Nowadays, that's probably the norm for most people. Story 54. Hey, the older generation thought hey was so rude. My grandparents were adamant that I greeted people with a hello or a casual hi. Hey is for horses, not for me. Now everyone says hey as a greeting. Story 55. 20 years ago, not being accessible 24/7 was allowed. Now you have to tell everyone if you're going to be unavailable for even a few hours. Story 56. Being a total meanie while purporting to be holy and charitable. I'm not saying it wasn't common 20 years ago, but it was considered rude. Now it's normalized. Story 57. Not answering the door if you're not expecting anyone. If someone I know is coming round, they'll text. Story 58. Talking in movie theaters, wearing hats indoors, playing your music loudly in whatever public space you feel like. Story 59. My grandfather would smack the shoot out of us if we wore a hat indoors. Don't get me started about elbows on the table. Casual racism was A-okay though. Story 60. Using any sort of device in public without headphones. It's rude. No one wants to know about your life. Story 61. Chewing with your mouth open. Attempting to enter an elevator before all the people have exited. Cell phones in movie theaters, particularly blocking the person behind you. Story 62. Calling someone queer. Granted, it's probably still rude if you intend for it to be rude, but the LGBT community has appropriated it. Story 63. Declining an invite by just saying, "Nah, I don't feel like it." 20 years ago, social tragic end. Now, self-care. Story 64. Swearing is a much smaller deal for parents my age, millennials, as long as they don't do it somewhere stupid like school. Story 65. Having a loud, full-fledged cell phone call on speaker while sitting on a public toilet. Spoiler, if I'm in the next stall, I'm going to start flushing obnoxiously. Story 66. K as a reply. GRR to me, that's the equivalent of flipping me off. So rude. Anyone that knows me knows this. Story 67. I think texting is the biggest norm shift. I mean, 20 years ago, if you texted instead of calling, people thought you were cold or lazy. Now if you call without warning, it feels like a hostage situation. Story 68. Placing an order for something and saying, "Can I get?" instead of, "Please may I have." Dislike it, and I think it's really rude. Story 69. Wearing headphones everywhere. 20 years ago, it felt like you were shutting the world out and being rude. Now it's just normal to have earbuds in while shopping, commuting, or even chatting in between. Story 70. Talking on your cell phone in public spaces, restaurants, standing in line at the grocery store, elevators, etc. Story 71. I still find it shocking how people are saying F so casually now. 20 years ago, that was a, whoa, hold on moment. Story 72. Putting your attention on something else in the middle of a conversation with a person. People will pull their phone out mid-conversation and start reading something else like it's nothing. Imagine if someone pulled out a book and started reading it while you were talking to them. And then they were like, "Keep going, I'm listening." Story 73. Texting instead of calling. If you didn't call someone in the early 2000s, you were seen as standoffish. Now calling without warning feels borderline aggressive. Story 74. I think customer service has come a long way. People with a mindset from 20 years ago might complain about the Gen Z stare, but reasonable people couldn't care less. And I know personally I appreciate when I don't feel like a cashier, server, etc. feels the need to make pointless conversation. Story 75. Sheer dresses. It's the norm on red carpets now, but definitely wasn't normal for your clothes to be completely see-through back then. Story 76. Taking to someone else with earphones in. I'm 39, and I feel like I may be an old git, but I think it's shoot decorum. Story 77. Elbows on the table. Can't remember the last time I even thought about this, but remember struggling to keep my elbows off the table as a kid. Story 78. Talking to another human being who is ringing you up at a grocery store or making your coffee with plastic pods jammed into your ears. I have barely been alive 20 years and still find how ubiquitous headphones have become so rude. Story 79. Giving a picture of your male body part to a girl you just met would have been unfathomable 20 years ago. Now it appears to somewhat commonplace. I might not put it in the not rude category, but it definitely more commonplace. Story 80. 20 years ago, texting instead of calling. Now, if you call someone, it's intrusive. I can't tell you the number of times someone will send me a text message and ask if they can call. I'm old. Of course you can. Story 81. Talking politics, specifically who you vote for. In my house growing up, my parents even kept that info from each other. Story 82. Having your phone out when you talk to someone. Having your phone out at work. Having your phone out at the dinner table. Having a speakerphone conversation in public. Blasting music or idiotic YouTube reels from your phone in public. Story 83. 20-ish years ago, it used to be beware of Big Brother. Now people film anybody and anything, usually without permission. Story 84. Was Walmart people a thing 20 years ago? I know we have been dressing very casually for decades now, but I'm just wondering if the dirty Garfield sweater with spaghetti stains all over it, if that was allowed in public back in 2005. Story 85. Wearing casual clothes to the theater. People used to dress up, women in dresses and men in jackets, shirt and brown shoes. Now it's apparently acceptable to go in jeans, t-shirt, and trainers. Answer. My partner works in marketing for our local opera and theater. One of the reasons the public is aging and younger people don't visit the opera, the theater to a lesser extent, is that they're afraid of not fitting in. When we go, we usually dress up a little, but compared to the older folk, it's pretty casual. Honestly, someone in a t-shirt who stays focused on the performance is way less disruptive than someone huffing and puffing because they wore a jacket and are overheating. We can't complain about people not being cultured anymore, while being high-nosed anytime someone dares to show up without complying with an implicit dress code. The double standards are especially annoying is that some middle-aged attendees will whisper complain about someone in their 20s wearing jeans, white sneakers, and a t-shirt, and will chalk up someone in their 40s in the same outfit as a dynamic professional. Same applies for POC. Democratizing high culture means accepting that society and culture overall are always in evolution, enshrining theater, museums, etc. in old standards, in terms of attendance and content, leads to declining numbers of attendees and economical difficulties for a sector that already operates at a loss and relies on public funding. Rant over. Story 86. 1. Barking orders at staff. 2. Snatching items out of the service person's hand without even a thank you. 3. Talking on the phone while speaking at service staff. Story 87. Wearing sweatpants. If there's one thing I enjoyed about the pandemic years, it's the normalization of comfort over style. Story 88. Cursing, especially in public places or in front of children. Ask someone to watch their language nowadays and they're no longer apologetic. They argue with you. Story 89. Asking about your political affiliations and who you voted for. It used to be secret and rude to ask about. Wish that would return. Story 90. Walking uptown aisles at sporting events during play action, as opposed to waiting for a whistle caution flag, etc. Story 91. Reading something at the dining table. My parents used to drill it into my siblings and I that reading anything at mealtimes is incredibly rude to everyone else present. With the proliferation of smartphones, they are the ones with YouTube and Facebook out blaring brain rot while they have dinner. It's interesting how things turned out. Story 92. It was rude for journalists to write or call the president a liar, even if he was lying. Now they call them like they see them. Story 93. Asking a girl if she sells adult content of herself and how you can access it, implying you will probably go jack off to it later. Story 94. Wearing pajamas in public. No one wants to see that shoot. Wear clothes. It's as rude as wearing inappropriate clothing anywhere else. Fill in the blank. Story 95. Probably being on your phone all the time 20 years ago. People would think you're ignoring them. Now it's just life. Story 96. Not offering guests an alcoholic drink when they arrive. Drinking is not as ubiquitous as it was when I was growing up. Story 97. Answering the phone while company was over. Now people just play on their phones at the dinner table. Story 98. Canceling on social events with really short notice or straight up not showing without even notifying the host. Story 99. A lot of the things people considered rude then, but is normal now, is still rude, but people just normalize it. Story 100. Exclusively using speakerphone. I swear at my job there will be 3 students all simultaneously having conversations on speakerphone at the top of their lungs within 10 feet of each other, and I don't get it. Story 101. Filming everything and anything, including people's kids, and then claiming it's your freedom to do what you want in public. Story 102. Better way. How about real communication? Pick up the phone. We have lost that touch, the human touch. We are all now shoot them a text. The one person takes it the wrong way. Just by using 1 or 2 words and your whole deal is off. Or you have to start from square one. Yes, it's a busy world. It's always been a busy world. It's just today. People don't know how to handle it because I don't know about communication. I seen deals fall apart just over 2 lousy words, and it was taken improperly. Now I'm not old. I'm wise. Did you send your kid a text and scold him for something he has done? If you have your lousy parent, you put your face in front of that kid and you tell him what's right and wrong. But we did it ourselves. Story 103. Giving unsolicited advice. Somehow people are more inclined to give it now, or have people always thought they know more than the other person. Story 104. Elbows or hats at the table. My grandpa was super serious about that for whatever reason. I never thought about it much, but when eating at friends, their families would always notice, especially since I would cut my food with knife in right hand and fork in left, and would push the food up onto the fork with the knife blade and eat with the fork in my left hand. I don't think anyone outside of snooty circles cares about this stuff anymore. Working class people aren't going to fancy dinners these days, and there's less of a front put on by individuals stuck in lower class economic situations to appear upper class. Story 105. Might be more than 20 years, but when playing fighting games, Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter, etc., not giving second rounds. Story 106. Walking around with fudge XXX written on your shirt. At some point, we thought it might be offensive to some people to openly swear in front of them or their kids. Story 107. Waiting before texting back. People used to treat text messages as urgent communications, and if you left somebody hanging, they would get mad. Now, we all get so many texts all day that we implicitly know there's little sense of urgency unless we specifically mention it. My friends and I will go days between replies sometimes. Story 108. Not using headphones when playing music or noisy things, on buses, restaurants, wherever. It's still rude, I think, but somehow so normal. Story 109. 20 years ago, using your phone while talking to someone? So rude. Now, wait, you're still talking without checking your phone? You don't have AI taking notes for you. Story 110. Bringing a TV into a restaurant and watching a show on max volume. Or having a phone call loudly at a table at a restaurant. Oh wait, that's rude now too, but yet here we are. Story 111. Just not returning calls. Like a sibling calls and you're just, I don't feel like talking. But then you don't call back even when you are able. Story 112. Sending a happy birthday, Merry Christmas, other holiday, or other brief impersonal platitude over text, SMS, while out of the country, and or sending a bunch of smaller text messages where one bigger one would have done because it charges the recipient 10 to 30 cents each and seems careless. Now, unlimited texting, roaming, VoLTE, and texting through an app is so ubiquitous, it's been forgotten. Story 113. Filming strangers in public. Someone doing something a little off or out of the ordinary. Immediately, people's first reaction is to yank out their phone and film it. It's awful. Back in the day, nobody did that shoot. Hardly anyone was taking pictures or filming anything. Even with camcorders, it wasn't commonplace. There is no privacy anymore. Before, it would have been fudge rude, and you would have been looked at like an alien if you did that kind of shoot. Now, it's common and awful. Story 114. Wearing headphones in public spaces. 20 years ago, if you kept your earphones in while talking to someone, it was seen as dismissive or rude. Now it's completely normal to walk into a shop, grab a coffee, even chat briefly with someone while one AirPod is still in. It's gone from antisocial to just everyday life. Story 115. People feel entitled and no longer say thank you. Generally doesn't bother me, but yes, I still judge. Story 116. People taking ages to reply via text. Even when they read the message, I always try reply quick if I see the message, because it's like if someone said hello to me in person, I wouldn't wait 2 hours later to respond. Story 117. Oddly specific, but the default polite answer to thank you is you're welcome for generation above me and no worries for mine and younger. Both groups implicitly see the other one as more standoffish. Story 118. Ghosting. Used to be, you never called me back. Now, we dated for 6 months and then she just evaporated into thin air. Story 119. The Irish goodbye. Especially if you live in the Midwest and are likely to get trapped in a Midwest goodbye. At least amongst everyone I know, if you're able to successfully do one, it's seen as impressive and a sign of respect, LOL. Story 120. Walking around in public with a speakerphone on and having a loud conversation, even inside, such as a restaurant. This is so common these days. No, I don't want to hear your conversation. Why have it on speakerphone and hold the phone to your ears? Are you deaf? Story 121. Interrupting someone talking on the phone. Nowadays, it's fudge you for using the phone. I'm here for it. Story 122. Saying shut up. Growing up, my mom would have thought I had just said the F word if I said shut up, LOL. Now it's slang and I joke with my husband and kids with all the time. Story 123. IDK if it was true back then. A bit before my time, but I remember a Seinfeld episode where they talk about how it's rude to call someone about a serious matter with your car phone cell phone. Instead, they say that serious matters should be discussed over a home phone. Story 124. In 2005, cell phones became ubiquitous as things like T-Mobile burners flew off the shelves. If someone entered your space, like home, residence, or close quarters in public, while ignoring you and speaking to someone on the phone, that was rude. The joke went, if you want to talk on the phone in public, you should be forced to wear a phone booth-shaped box around your face while you do it, so we don't have to listen to you. Now, 20 years later, if you're somewhere that nobody is on their cell in some capacity, you'd probably get highly suspicious. Story 125. Being petty. It used to be a bad thing to be called petty. Now everyone seems to celebrate it. And most of what people describe as them being petty is really just them being passive-aggressive and a poor communicator. Story 126. Having your cell phone in front of you 100 of the time. At dinner with friends, checking out at the grocery store, at a movie. Story 127. Not raising your hand. Teachers would be super strict about raising your hand and being called on before answering. I'm in college now, and teachers are basically begging the class to participate and request we just say the answer. Story 128. Talking about politics with people you aren't close with. I remember growing up, no one would just casually talk about politics in their day-to-day with people. Now you cannot escape it, and if you don't want to talk about it, it is automatically assumed that you believe in something that is taboo. Story 129. Saying hey, as innocent as that sounds, there would always be old people saying, hey is for horses, in a scolding tone, making it clear they were annoyed you were saying hey to them instead of hello or something. Story 130. Getting abruptly up from a table or leaving a room without saying, excuse me. Better manners, just generally speaking, have disappeared. Story 131. Buying out a store's entire stock of useless nerd shoot, then flipping it online for double the price. Story 132. Texting. I'm here instead of knocking on the door. Even older adults do it, and it feels very juvenile to me. Story 133. When you were taking a photo, people stopped and waited. Now, they see you're about to take a shot and walk right through it. Story 134. 20 years ago, if someone said that a certain minority group had smaller brains than the majority ethnic group, they would lose their careers. Now they get a podcast. Story 135. Talking with your mouth full. To be honest, table manners generally. Elbows on the table, eating with fingers when it's not finger food, getting up when other people haven't finished, slouching, chewing with open mouths. Maybe it's phones. Maybe it's having more meals in front of the TV. I don't know, but I feel like I've come from another planet. People react like I'm the only person who has heard that chewing with your mouth open is rude, and it seems to be a decline across the board rather than kids these days. My dad's table manners are atrocious, but when I was a kid, he wouldn't have stood for any of it. Story 136. Being on your phone around other people. 20 years ago, it was seen as ignoring or disrespectful. Now it's just part of hanging out. People will scroll, check messages, or even film the moment without anyone batting an eye. Story 137. Being on your phone during conversations. Back then, checking your phone while talking to someone was considered disrespectful. Now, glancing at notifications mid-conversation is pretty common. Story 138. Being proud of anti-intellectualism, anti-science, and anti-education. Conspiracy theories and plain old misinformation are peddled by politicians, news anchors, and the general public. Story 139. Wearing t-shirts that are either intimacy, vulgar, or profane. I was out yesterday at a public event, lots of kids around, and I saw multiple t-shirts with the word fudge on them. Story 140. The President of the United States shoot his diapers in the Oval Office in front of cameras and foreign dignitaries. Story 141. Refusing someone's gift of food. I remember back then getting scolded for not eating someone else's food. But ever since COVID and the rise of allergen awareness and celiac disease, it's been way more accepted to turn stuff down. Story 142. Wearing brightly colored socks or clothing to work. We would be reprimanded and sent home, either to take the day off unpaid or to go back and change to more appropriate clothes. Nothing like basic neutrals to liven up a desk job. Story 143. Not responding to texts. Even my parents do it to me now. It feels totally rude to me, but everyone does it, so I guess it's normal. Story 144. Had a teacher who disliked when students would reply to a thank you with a variation of no worries, no biggie, no problem, etc., etc. The only acceptable response to a thank you is you are welcome. Cue rant about the new ungrateful generation. Story 145. I've had a lot of people comment that since COVID lockdowns, people make eye contact less. I haven't noticed, but I also never made eye contact before COVID. Story 146. Not waving your hand to thank another driver for a courteous act, such as yielding the right-of-way, allowing you to merge, letting you pass, etc. Story 147. Bringing a phone to school. In many of my classes in college, we were actually encouraged to use our phones at certain points to pull up examples and stuff in class discussions. Story 148. Knocking on people's doors, calling people spontaneously. As a spontaneous person, I dislike this. Granted, I still do it. Story 149. Not holding the door for someone. Now it's like an insult to hold open a door for somebody. It's backwards. Story 150. People's manners have gotten horrible, including table manners. Nobody can behave in public anymore. Between meltdowns, entitlement, rudeness, and eating like animals in a trough, we've just lost all sense of decorum. It makes me feel 1,000 years old, but I long for the days when I could go out and not see someone's labia sticking out from their booty shorts, or not watch people claw food from their mouths and spit it back on the plate, or see them berate a 16-year-old cashier over ketchup packets. Story 151. The use of ya during in-person conversation. Growing up, I was always taught to say yes or yes, sir, mom when responding. Never ya, especially to people older than you. Story 152. Talking nonstop in the cinema or theater would be up there, along with playing music on your phone or having a long conversation on your phone without using headphones. Public spaces no longer work because of this. Story 153. Talking about mental health openly. 2 decades ago, people thought it was too personal or inappropriate. Now it's encouraged and seen as normal. Story 154. Not sure if this fits, and it's not 100, but I noticed a remarkable uptick in young women calling each other CS and it being casual. I guess it's similar to when I was younger and friends would call each other meanie ho slut, etc. But C was just an absolute no for us. The most remarkable instance I saw of this was a Gen Z girl call her millennial sister a C, which resulted in a near fistfight because Z thought it was no big deal, but millennial took it as a decree of war. Story 155. Having a conversation with somebody while wearing earbuds headphones. Seems like I might be the only person who still considers it rude. Story 156. Ignoring one's phone call or text because you're busy now, it's just standard operating procedure. Back then, that would have been a full-on personal insult. Story 157. Using shops as phone booths when you want to make a call and the street's a bit noisy. Actually, being on the phone in shops in the first place. Bonus points for glaring at the staff for having the temerity to try and interact with you. Story 158. Texting mid-conversation. It used to be the ultimate I'm not listening move. Now, if you don't quickly check your phone when it buzzes, people think you're weird. We all just accept that everyone is half present. Same with taking phone calls in public. Everyone's yelling on AirPods like they're alone in their living room. Story 159. Using your phone at the dinner table. 20 years ago, it was seen as disrespectful, but now it's just everyday life. Story 160. So we're taking 2005. That feels like yesterday. I think the main thing is today we talk more opening about religion and politics than ever before. Back then, it was still somewhat avoided. Story 161. We've effectively replaced the very common word with fiuckin, e.g., so I was at fucking what's his name? Oh yeah, Dave's place the other day. Story 162. Keeping in mind that your question might have been rhetorical, I think for a lot of people this is a story. It's also purely to put it on social media and get some engagement.